What's up guys, Ender Unknown here. I'm back for episode 2 of our Dungeon Crawler C# series, and today we're going to be working on getting the player made and a very basic combat encounter. So, adding some functionality to what we've been working on so far. So, to start, before we actually do any of that, I do want to go over some visual fixes here. First thing is with this, what is this called? Encounter prompt. I want to change the border style to none and the cursor style to default, because previously when hovering over this text box here, the cursor would go to the I-beam, I think is what it's called, and you couldn't see it, and it was just unusual. And also with the border, it looks a little bit odd. So yeah, that is all that we need to do here, and we're going to get straight into it. So let's start by creating a new class, and we're going to call this Living Base, I suppose. This is going to be the base class for pretty much all of our, like anything that we encounter. So enemies and the player, I suppose. Yeah, so what we are going to do, actually first, we need to create another class and call this damage, because I would like to add a kind of a Dungeons and Dragons inspired damage type system. So we're just gonna call this, no, okay. Well, you can rename stuff, which is handy. There we go. Okay. Public class damage. Damage is going to have a string called a type, and more importantly, a int called amount. There are going to be 4 damage types: kinetic, frost, shock, and scorch. And for our constructor, we're going to want the amount, and we're also going to have a default string, type is going to equal kinetic. So yeah, and of course you guys can add more. I'm just going with the basic 3 here, 4 here. We're not going to be doing much with damage or really advanced combat today. A lot of the stuff is going to be placeholders until we add items, which I actually want to do next week's video. Yeah, so we'll be working on that at a later point. I just want to get the basics of the encounter working. Anyways, this dot amount is going to equal the amount, and type is going to equal type. Pretty simple. That is all that we need to do with damage right now. So yeah, back to living base. Of course, we're going to want a string called name. We're going to want a integer called generic max health, and we're going to want a current health. We're also going to want a list of string called I don't know, damage res for damage resistances is going to equal string, and the same for vulnerability. New list. And I suppose might as well, it's easier to add it now than later. We'll add damage immunities. And just there for shorthand. Okay, so we do need to add a couple helper functions with those resistances and damage modifiers or whatever. So is resistant to a string called type. We're going to just return, does our damage resistance list, oops, No, it doesn't like that I have. We'll sort that parenthesis out later. Or curly brace. What was I doing? Oh yeah, does this contain type? There we go. Now it fixed itself. And we're going to want the same for is immune. Nope, we're just going to use the shorthand. Pretty much this is all going to be the same here. Type. And finally, is vulnerable. And we'll use this in just a sec here. Contains type. There we go. Okay, so yeah, that is pretty simple. One more thing that we're going to have as a temporary that I'm just thinking of now that we're going to need is a integer for power. I don't know. We're going to be, like I said, we're going to be replacing this with an item system. So I guess power probably will stay and it'll just be like the unarmed strike or whatever. So punching or kicking or whatever. But yeah, so we'll figure that out. Now we need to work on some of our other helper functions. So a couple of these are going to be like, we'll just want a attack method. We're going to want a do damage method. What else are we gonna need? Just that for now. So I guess with attack, we're going to want a living base called target. And of course, like I said, and I'm going to stop saying this, I keep saying this, I don't know why, attack is going to be more exciting later. But for right now, it'll be target dot do damage, new damage, and we're just going to do power. So it will be kinetic. If I can spell that. There we go. And of course we need to create this here. Yeah, so we need to come up with a couple things like a resistance. Oh, yeah, int. Actually, we might as well just check if they're invulnerable. So, if we is immune to damage type, we're just going to return because we're not going to take damage. Otherwise, which I guess we don't even need an else statement, we're going to have a float called resistance mod, because this will half damage, and that is going to equal, we'll have a inline boolean statement, is resistant to damage type. If that is true, then it'll be 0.5 float, otherwise it'll just be 1. And we'll also have a vulnerability mod, that's going to equal damage type. If that is true, it'll be 2, or 2 times damage, otherwise it'll just be 1. Yeah. So then our amount is going to equal, we're going to need to cast math.round. Actually, no, we want ceiling. So ceiling is rounding, just it's gonna, even if it's like 0.00001, instead of rounding down, it'll round up, which is pretty much what we want, because we never want damage to be 0, we always want the person or enemy to be, the player or the enemy doing 1 damage minimum. even after, unless it's invulnerable. So, yeah. We'll also need to cast this to a decimal, but the amount is going to be damage at amount, multiplied by our resistance mod, multiplied by our vulnerability mod. So for resistance, we shouldn't be vulnerable to it, so it'll be 1 multiplied by 0.5, so it'll be 0.5 multiplied by the amount, or vice versa. If we are vulnerable, we shouldn't be resistant to it, otherwise something went wrong in the code. Yeah, then it's just times 2. And then of course we're going to have our current health is going to be subtracted by our amount. And then this is actually what we need is public bool should die, and we'll return current health less than or equal to 0. And of course we're going to actually want, we'll just call it public void death. And we're not going to do anything with that, so not right now, at least. I mean, I guess we could just close the... Yeah, we'll just close exit code, I don't know, 13. We'll figure out, we'll move them back to the main menu, but right now we don't have a main menu, so yeah. All in good time. There we go. So that's pretty much all that we need for living base. We're also going to need to go create a player and also an enemy. So we're going to start with the player. Just call this player. Class player. And oh yeah, we need to make sure that this extends living base. And living base actually should be abstract. Player, yeah. Okay, so public player. Again, we'll be setting a lot of this stuff programmatically. So later on, name is just going to equal player1 as a placeholder. Generic max health is going to equal 10. Current health is going to equal get. Oh, I didn't make that method yet. One more thing in living base. We need to add in public int get max health. And for right now, that's just going to return generic health, but eventually I want to add like a skill tree or something. So current health is going to equal get max health. So yeah, we have all of this. And of course we need our power is just going to equal 2. That'll be their punch attack or whatever. Just melee. Basic unarmed melee strike. Yeah, so that right now is all that we need in our player. They're not going to be resistant, vulnerable, or immune to anything because that doesn't really make sense. We'll have to add that with items and whatnot. But yeah, so now we're going to make a enemy. And then after that we're going to make our combat encounters. So enemy is also going to extend living base. Enemy we are going to be creating more programmatically. So we're going to have a string name. We're going to have a int max health. We're going to have power. And vulnerabilities and whatnot we can set later. So this .name is going to equal name. This power is going to equal power, and generic max health will equal max health, and current health will equal get max health. There we go. So yeah, pretty basic here as well. These will get more complex, especially the player. This is again is just generic enemy. We'll add bosses or something maybe if I get around to it later. So yeah, now we are going to have to go do a few things in some of these other classes. The main one is encounter, because everything is going to be derived from an encounter. The first thing we're going to actually do is just delete first encounter here. It'll throw an error. We'll fix that later. Just because we no longer define first encounter. And I believe the game engine's trying to use it. We're going to want a method called setPlayer. And actually, no, we're just going to call this start encounter. And we do want this a virtual void because we want our anything that's derived from the encounter class to be able to override this. And of course, we're going to need a player. So all this is going to do is set our player equal to the player. Because this is the base encounter, it doesn't do anything. It's very boring. Yeah, so we've got that in our game engine. Nope, not a game engine. Our game. We do need to go and have our encounter. We're going to start the encounter. We do need a player. So to start this, we're going to, or set the encounter, we're going to need player. Although, to make this simple, we're just going to go into our game engine. We're going to add a public static player called current player. We're going to go back into our game, and we're just going to do game engine dot current player. Very simple. So we'll just do it that way to keep things easy. And then, of course, in-game engine, we're going to... Oh yeah, we're just getting this error, like I said, first encounter. We'll start a different one later, so we'll just comment that out for right now. For now, also, current player is just going to equal a new player, because we don't have any, like, input system meant to build a player. We'll do that again later. Okay, so now that we have all that set up, we are pretty much good to go make our combat encounter. So I'm just going to call this combat encounter. It's going to extend our just normal not encoder encounter. And as such, we need our constructor, which we're not going to do a lot with this aside from add an enemy. And of course, we're going to need an enemy inside this encounter as well. So this set enemy is going to equal enemy. Perfect. So pretty much with the combat encounter, we're going to want to override our start encounter. And actually, we do want to keep that base. So what we want to do is add the player's possible actions, or attacks and abilities and various, however you want to do that, or however you want to, whatever they're called, I don't know, to the actions list. And so to do that, right now the only action they're going to be able to take is to just strike. And of course we'll add in main menu and run or store or whatever when we make those, but right now we don't have those made. So I guess we'd maybe just add exit as we do. So yeah, we do have to add these manually for right now. So we're gonna just do actions.add new action button. The name is gonna be called strike. There we go. I suppose we'll make this just a method. What do we want to do? Private void called strike is equal encounter. I should just call it E. No, we'll call it an encounter. And we should be able to just pass in strike. Like that. As it is in the same, it has the same arguments as the delegate that action button needs. That's going to be an item. We're going to make a helmet and we're going to call it the action bucket. Okay, or some artifact or something. Okay, that's getting written down on my to-do list. We're going to want a combat encounter. So we'll just call that E. Is equal to the cast, combat encounter. We know it's going to be a combat encounter, so we don't have to check or anything because it's literally going to get this encounter passed into it. But it doesn't know that now. And we're going to want to do e.player.attack e.enemy. So pretty much we'll click the strike button, it'll attack. Then we are going to have the enemy's turn, or we'll do the enemy's turn, so do enemy turn, and we want a combat encounter C. I'll just call it encounter. I won't continue to name one-letter variables as I often do in my own work, because I realize that makes it hard to follow sometimes. Yeah, so for the enemy's turn, this is going to be ridiculously simple, and it is I'm kind of chuckling as I say this. It's literally just the enemy is going to encounter that enemy is going to just attack the player. Yeah. So that is, of course, there's going to be more to this later, as I keep saying, and said I would stop saying. So do enemy turns. Pretty much we're going to do an ability or an attack or something, and then they're going to do their turn. So yeah, again, we'll make it more unique later. Okay, so what we need to do now is actually have a way to write onto our game. So right now, this isn't going to do anything when we set it up. We have no way to show the player's health. We have no way to do any of that stuff. So yeah, we're going to create that. I think the best way for the player will be to actually make like a little, I don't know, info bubble for the player, and we're going to just do it right up past this encounter label. So we're going to want a, honestly, we're just going to do a text box. And we'll put it up here. The back color is going to be whatever this is. We'll just copy it. We'll turn the border style to none. Label, we're going to grab button highlight for the forecolor. We're going to go down and call this player info. And we're also going to go find, where does it say that? Multi-line. Here we go. We want multi-line. And pretty much this is just going to extend on the top here like this. And yeah, we're also going to want to set, did we set this one? Top left, yeah, perfect. Top right for the anchor. And I'm pretty sure that is all that we need to do. So we'll have like player health or whatever. So health 10. And we'll maybe make this a little bigger. We'll make that 10. 14. Oh, we have size here. That I don't know what I did. 12. You guys can play with the size. I guess we'll make it big now, and worry about those other problems later, such as I don't know, like when we have a ton of things to display. I don't know what we're all going to need to display. Anyways, yeah, that's all we need to do here. So in our game here, we're going to want to define a couple helper methods, and those are just going to allow us to write onto the screen with ease. So we're going to want a public void called write text, and we're going to want some text, string text. So pretty much what this is going to do is get our encounter prompt.text, and it's just going to equal text. So this is a really simple method. We just can't access encounter prompt because I believe it is private. And this is just a more convenient way to do it. Then we're also going to want to update player stats, I guess. And we don't need any access to that because we have players stored globally. So our what is it called? What did we call it? We called it player info dot text is going to equal we're just going to do health and we'll get our game engine dot current player dot current health. There we go. So yeah, and I also don't think I've explained this before. So if you put this commonly known as the dollar symbol or whatever, it's a string operator thingy that allows us to add bracket curly braces and whatever variables inside is displayed. But what's nice about it is you don't have to concatenate the strings using like plus, because otherwise you'd have to do something that looked like health space plus the variable plus space dot 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 whatever else we'd say. So this is just shorthand for that because we can write hello world back here if we want. Anyways, that is just a handy little thing. We'll add in more things that we can update. When we set the encounter, we are going to want to update the player stats. And I guess we could replace this stuff with the write function, but honestly that doesn't matter. So what we are going to do, however, is go back into our combat encounter, and after the enemy's turn, headset turned off there again. It seems to be a problem. I was doing things. Yeah. So we were going to add in. We're going to have our game engine. We do have a game instance, right? Yeah, we do. Game dot write text, and this would be the flavor text, I guess. So you punch the. We can use that fancy operation here. Enemies dot name for power kinetic damage. Yeah, so that should work nicely. And why is good gravy? Okay. Gotta love spelling errors. There we go. Problem solved. Never happened. Yeah, so pretty much we are just gonna have the game write that text to the screen. Probably make a helper function to do, or to make this a little easier. And then, and actually we want this to be after. One thing I do want to add is in our attack method, we're actually going to, or I'd like to output a integer, which is how much damage was dealt. So we're going to do this here as well, because I think that'd be cool. And it'd also help us display the information a little better. So, amount, and then if the player doesn't die, of course, why do I need to disable that. Game clip. Oh, my recording has been just plagued with troubles today. Sorry. That's why I sound probably discombobulated. Else, yeah, okay. Just return. And we'll return our amount. Okay, there we go. So, now in our combat encounter, when we attack the enemy, we're going to get a integer called amount. And so instead of using, yeah, we are just going to write this. So amount int string, actually. So do enemy turn is going to get a string called text, I guess, is going to equal that. And essentially this is going to, say whatever the enemy did back, and then we're going to write it to the screen. So, yeah, you punch the enemy for however much damage, and we are actually going to want to just do amount instead. There is no randomness yet, but eventually there will be. And then enemy's name attacks you back for, and then string. Oh, no, text. And pretty much this will be an amount, return, attacks you back for amount, kinetic. There. We do have the space there, yeah, so that should be good. So, yeah. Now we are going to need to, the last thing we need to do is create a combat encounter to actually do. Then we'll go test this out and make sure everything works smoothly. So, I'd like to get them randomly generated eventually, but for now we're just going to have a public static combat counter. Combat 1 is going to equal new combat encounter. The title is going to be, and that wasn't supposed to pop up. This is just my day today. What was I? Okay. Combat encounter. Title. Fight. You guys come up with more creative stuff. I don't know. You see an enemy. New list of action buttons. That is going to just be empty. And new enemy whose name is going to be, well, it is Christmas today, not today, it will be Christmas, so I guess we'll make an elf an enemy. So the elf is going to have a max health of 5 and a power of 1. Okay, now in our game engine, we are going to want to set the encounter equal to combat encounter dot combat 1. And we're going to go run this. Yeah, so fight, you see an enemy. We have a health of 10 and the strike ability. We are going to eventually, we will be printing the enemy's health to this console here. I forgot to do that, so yeah. I punched the elf for 2 kinetic, and the elf attacks me back for 1. Yeah, I see a couple things that I did forget to do, and I do apologize for that. If you can tell, this has been a interesting day for me. So back in combat encounter, we're going to want to do 2 things here. You're going to want to do game engine, that game dot update the player stats. In the prompt, we are going to want to type in elf and then 10 or 5. It has 5 health. We're gonna have a nicer way to do this later. It's just what I'm thinking of for now. Once we get it programmatically is what I mean, and we'll come up with better things to write. And I guess we'll just write enemy.name and enemy.current health. I don't know, something 30 like that. That doesn't seem... Yeah, that seems fine. Okay, so let's build and start it now. So we see an enemy, an elf. We're gonna punch the elf. The elf now has 3 health. And it punched us back for 1. Punch the elf again. And the game closes because we killed the elf. So I do need to go find... Yeah, living base here. See, death right now is just going to exit. We do need to fix that eventually. So the player is going to do damage to the elf first. And we will actually just have a bool here called is dead. And whenever we attack, if is dead, we're just going to return 0. Or actually, we'll return -1, and that'll be a indicator not to display any text or anything. So yeah, and death, instead of just closing it, we're gonna just set is dead equal to true. In our combat encounter, we're going to go figure out. Let me do turn. Yeah, so if mount is less than 0, we're going to instead return, and again, this is going to be programmatically generated later, death text, which will be the elf has died. And then you'll gain gold or experience, or you'll be able to loot the elf or whatever. So yeah, let's go start that. So, whack the elf, punch the elf. The elf has died, and of course we are going to... New name, current health is just what we're going to stick in here. Like that. See an elf. Elf has health, elf has health, the alpha takes you back. Okay. Oh. Yeah, see, this is why we just do everything programmatically. Because the alpha takes you back for the elf has died does not make sense. There we go. And then we'll do something. But again, we don't have a way to move on to the next encounter or any of that. The game loop we will make after we get items figured out, I think. So probably next episode will probably be items. The following episode will probably be the game, randomization, getting the loop going, and then the episode after that will be serialization, and then we'll figure it out from there. So, yeah. Trying to think of if there's anything else that I want to do with this episode. I'm pretty sure that this is what we are just going to be good with for right now, because it's kind of hard to build upon a lot of these mechanics until my microphone cut out again or something. I don't know. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. That's going to be all for this episode. We will be back next week with a more coordinated and more composed video so that I'll hopefully be less distracted. And I would like you guys to have a very Merry Christmas. So, yeah. Thank you guys for watching. Ender out.